Alright guys, it has finally happened. I managed to break the game with a settlement that is so big that the engine cannot handle it anymore. Yeah, it results in horrible texture tearing in certain places. I managed to record around it for the most part by avoiding specific angles, but I left some of it in so you guys can see what happens when you overdo it. So, welcome to the Water Baron's water purification business. The Baron used to work for Mr. House. He was one of the chairmen originally who got ambitious and wanted to expand their influence to other parts of the country. Word got around that the Institute was getting more powerful, so the Baron pitched the idea to Mr. House to establish a presence. He figured the easiest way to control people would be to provide something essential, like fresh, rat-free water, and rebuild, achieve what the Minutemen were struggling with. That was all before Benny's betrayal, of course. The Baron received a bunch of Securitrons for protection and marched east, by himself at first. On his travels he acquired 4 ghouls with essential knowledge to run a water empire. You'll notice that all his employees are ghouls. Why ghouls? It had nothing to do with kindness. The Baron is a calculating man. He figured that he could capitalize on their shunned existence. He offered them respect and wealth, something very hard to come by for ghoul. Good neighbor may be a refuge, but the Baron promised a life in luxury unimaginable to most people in the Commonwealth. He knew he could inspire loyalty in those labeled abominations.
I hope.
You see the texture tearing briefly here in a minute. It only happens when the whole settlement on the lake below is in full view. Mostly the road glitches, but it also happens to the rocks in the distance. So here it is, see? It goes away as soon as I pan away. There's a really bad instance later inside the bathhouse that I also left in for you guys to observe. So I guess I won't be uploading a blueprint of this particular settlement. Anyway, back to the Water Baron.
Easy living, this ain't.
This is Edward, the robot mechanic. He's a huge comic book fan, as you can see. The Silver Shroud is his favorite one. I built him a nerdy comic fan mansion I'll show off at the end of the tour. Oh, and the game also struggles to render all the surface reflections and shadows that Reactor EMB can do. You'll see the water change all the time, it's a little annoying. As for the Baron's whole water distribution business, he got the water trucks from the NCR. Still baffles me to this day that other regions have working vehicles, but the East Coast lives like cavemen. In any case, cunning as a Baron is, he pitched his water business to the NCR as well, telling them he'll help people on a big scale and re-establish civilization to a fragmented Commonwealth, and he'll also spread the word that the NCR is funding this. Of course, the Baron doesn't really care about helping people. He only cares about cabs and living like a king. He's very generous with all of his workers, though. He understands that sharing his wealth lowers the chances for rebellion, so everybody lives in clean houses with free access to food and booze. I built all the mansions with Snappy House Kit in combination with a lot of horizontal wooden beams for a log cabin sort of feel. I wanted all houses to be made out of wood, but Snappy doesn't have wooden walls without wallpaper. You can imagine how much work placing hundreds of those was, and this is probably the reason the engine got overwhelmed too. I actually hit the build limit even though I increased it to like 20 times with a mod. I had to resort to the weapon glitch I haven't used in years. For the smaller homes I used more wooden walls. Otherwise my computer would probably have caught fire. By the way, I upgraded my computer that was 8 years old to an i7-13700K and an RTX 4090, and it didn't improve performance in this game one bit. I guess you can't fix the engine's limitations. In fact, RTX cards crashed the game because the way Fallout 4 renders weapon debris, it's not supported anymore by Nvidia. So I needed to download a fix for that. This is the Baron who goes by the name Chester Griffin, enjoying life in the nicest house the Commonwealth has ever seen. Now, the water baron is still a gangster and he runs his business a little bit like extortion. He'll ask the maximum amount of caps he can squeeze out of a settlement. If they complain, he'll send one of his men and a bunch of securitrons to make his customers comply. On the surface, he's a calm and charming man. He looks non-threatening. He's an excellent salesman. And he's all chummy with his men. He really doesn't care what they look like. He has no ill will towards any group for silly reasons like race or religion. People are either assets or obstacles, and good assets need to be nurtured. So the Baron is actually well liked by his men despite questionable business practices. Some of his men were model citizens before the war, and while they may not like the details of this operation, they are just glad for a decent life doing easy work distributing water. They are helping people lead healthier lives at the end of the day. The three smaller mansions right across are outside the build zone, meaning I had to drag every single item over there after placing it inside the boundary. Yes, this made everything take 3 times as long. I googled if there's a console command or mod that just does away with this restriction, but there's only one mod that does away with borders altogether, so that you could build up the entire map basically. And of course such a mod is buggy and will potentially corrupt the entire save file, so I didn't risk it. Because the houses are outside a boundary, I cannot assign settlers there either. They will teleport there in the evening when they idle, but they cannot be assigned. So I could not place the barons 4 main guys inside their houses. They'll be doing work in the main area. Clyde here loves motorcycles and cars, as you can see. The thing he misses the most from before is functioning vehicles. I mean, don't we all? A few years ago he finally acquired a shiny Prevo motorcycle through his connections with the Baron, who asked around and arranged a meeting with the previous owner who found it inside a bunker. For a nice bag of caps, he sold it, and Clyde will defend the settlement and the Baron with his life for returning a piece of his pre-war life to him. Which is of course why the Baron did this for him. Frank and Louis are guards who like to make their own ammo. Caravans provide the water baron and his men with everything they need. They rarely go on scavenger hunts anymore themselves, but they like to keep busy, so these two make ammo. Frank was a policeman before the war, almost died on the job once. He had a pretty good idea what would happen when society collapses and survival becomes everything. 200 years later, nothing much has changed, so when the Baron recruited him and made promises, he was very. To his surprise, things have worked out nicely though, and if things ever go to shit, he's the man with all the ammo. Louis was a high school chemistry teacher, but he's not cooking meth, he's cooking ammo. This is Roland the mechanic who maintains the water purifiers and the water wheels. It is not as much work as you might think. Everybody in this place has plenty of free time. Charlie and Lonnie met 23 years ago before the Baron hired them to put the purified water into barrels. Easy, honest work. Charlie had a little flower shop before the war. The obliteration of so much vegetation pains him to this day. He now paints flowers that no longer exist. Lonnie was a poet by passion and faceless office drone by profession for a company that sold kitchen appliances. They met a good neighbor, both eventually tired of the place, looking for someplace quieter with blue skies and fresh air. Harvey and Morris are 2 more guards. Morris wanted to be a professional baseball player before the war and had a promising athletic future ahead of him. He gets in a gloomy mood sometimes, contemplating what could have been. The radiation affected his lungs and he cannot run fast for long anymore, but he works out every day trying to stay as fit as he can despite everything. Harvey loved to play baseball but worked in insurance. He was a guard in Diamond City for a while before the Ghoul Purge. Morris got him to work out and he's in the best shape now he's ever been. The watering hole is their own private bar where all the drinks are free and served by the robot shakes I already used for my Westworld settlement. The Baron's men enjoy a lot of time off, except for maybe the water truck drivers and the guards of course. Their jobs are easily done in a few hours a day. It's not like the water purifiers and water wheels break every day. The workers are of course allowed to leave the settlement whenever they want. But no outsider is allowed inside, except for business partners up on the road when they have an appointment in the office. You might have noticed that there are no women here. All the workers are men, because women are trouble. The Baron doesn't want any drama over women complicating his business. If his men feel lonely, they can go to Good Neighbor or elsewhere. If they want to live with a woman, ghoul or not, they have to leave. This business is not family friendly. The Baron wants his water empire as hassle-free as possible. His men are well fed and live comfortably, and many are happy to stay and be among fellow ghouls. Some that have left return soon after because the world out there is still not that great for ghouls. The workers get the best food available, cooked by Earl, who was a chef in a very expensive restaurant. The transition to wasteland food has been, let's say, a struggle, and like pretty much any ghoul he misses pre-war food,
Everything hurts.
his meals are as good as it gets these days. He also cooks for the Baron all the time. The raw ingredients are traded with various settlements for a price cut on the water. The kitchen area is huge, as you can see, and at first I wanted to add a robot assistant, but I seem to have a mod conflict of sorts now. Robots cannot be assigned anymore. I can't even rename robots in the workbench. And the whole idea of having Securitron guards at specific places like settlement entry points or the Baron's mansion went out the window. Only 2 of the 6 guard posts are occupied because they are outside the boundaries, so as usual some details are lost, but I hope you enjoy the end result despite all these issues. Chef Earl shares a house with Larry, one of the truck drivers who likes to fish in his free time. Earl will happily prepare a great meal for Larry using the caught fish, which delights him to no end. The lake attracts Mirelurks all the time. The fence helps to keep them out, but the Securitrons have provide free Mirelurk meat every once in a while, taking care of the ones not deterred by the fence. And this is Lee, one of the Baron's 4 right-hand men the settlement couldn't run without, who lives in a mansion of his own. Lee designed the water purifiers and set up everything. He used to be an engineer. Whenever I build a settlement and add a sink and a toilet and stuff, I wonder how the plumbing would actually work. Where does the waste go? I guess we all ignore this question. For this settlement, however, I have an explanation. Not a sophisticated one and definitely not a pretty one, but it sort of makes sense. So basically all the dirty water, including what gets flushed down the toilet, gets pumped into the lake, and the water purifiers not only filter out the rats but also clean the water of everything else. So in a sense, this is a big water treatment plant for one settlement. Yeah, it's gross, but I figure with fewer than 20 people the water doesn't smell too bad since there are a lot of purifiers. Or maybe it is actually smelly, but it doesn't matter because ghouls lose their sense of smell. Then again, the Baron lives there too and he's not a ghoul. So let's settle for a minor smell the ghouls are blissfully unaware of and the Baron finds tolerable as well. And maybe he has scented candles everywhere in his mansion. So here you can see the awful texture tearing in all its glory. Probably because I'm facing the entire settlement and walls don't actually change anything about that. Subnautica was the same but worse, with frame rate dips whenever I looked in the direction of a base, even when inside the submarine or far away from it. But as you can see by the settlement tour, most of the settlement is completely fine, so fortunately I was able to finish this build and showcase it. For a while though, I thought dozens of hours of work were for nothing, or that my new graphics card is causing issues. But my Westworld settlement is still fine. It is only this one. It's just too big. I finally built something too big for the engine to handle. Not something I should be proud of, I guess, but now I know what happens. Irvine is a truck driver who used to be a history teacher. He spends a lot of his free time writing about the propaganda machine of the pre-war years and how everything led to the Great War. Most people these days don't seem to care. Naked survival happens to be more important than what got everyone into this mess in the first place. But Irvine feels like somebody should continue to preserve human history. The Baron is actually very interested in his work and enjoys reading Irvine's manuscript.
If you ain't been up to see graveyards, you should go. The whole place.
Roland is currently writing his memoirs. Before the war, he was an unremarkable man who worked in a drumlin diner. He dreamed of becoming a famous writer of science fiction. What really happened, though, was crazier than anything he could have come up with himself. So, at some point, he decided to simply write about the wild things that happen when you turn into a ghoul and are almost killed by your horrified family. Having lived for so long now, Roland has seen and done a lot of crazy stuff. But funny enough, from the feedback he has received over the years, people are more amazed at what life was like before civilization collapsed. Living in air-conditioned homes and paying taxes, huge hospitals, and buying food from inside your shiny car? Crazy! Marvin cleans and repairs all guns, and he likes to modify them too. This is just his relaxing hobby. The Baron could simply buy truckloads of new weapons, but Marvin says there is no need for that. He used to sell hunting rifles before the war, back when people shot deer for sport, rather than defend themselves against mutated monstrosities and raiders. If you ask him, guns make a lot more sense now than they did back then. And this is Lee's Mansion, the engineer and brain behind the water filtration system. He actually worked in a real water treatment plant before the war. On his journey east, the Baron came across this well-maintained little home next to a lake with this working water purifier. As he was poking around, a ghoul came out of the house and put a shotgun up to his face. Then he saw the Securitrons and lowered his gun. Lee agreed to help build the water empire under the condition of ample compensation for his work. The Baron eagerly agreed, so Lee grabbed the ashes of his dead wife and together they settled on the dark hollow pond as their base of operation. Lee loves to cook and eat and read. He is a big fan of modern art and has always enjoyed the finer things in life. He also loves soaking in the tub, sipping ice-cold Nuka-Cola from his mini-fridge. He spent the first few years after the war grieving for his wife, who simply died of radiation within a week, while he slowly turned into a ghoul. He spent decades in silent horror at his transformation. He moved to a cabin in the woods that used to be the couple's summer home. He never left the cabin once he had said everything he needed to survive. He did not want other people to see him like this, but he didn't have the courage to just end his life. The Baron's enterprise is the first thing in 200 years that made Lee realize that he could do some good and have purpose even as a shunned ghoul. He has since made friends among other ghouls and non-ghouls, and he's in a good place for the first time in a very long time. The literal centuries of isolation seem silly to him now. Vince is the Baron's negotiation partner, bodyguard, and enforcer. He was a bouncer in a popular club in his pre-ghoul life. One perk of his job was free Nuka-Cola. He's been addicted ever since. Well, downright obsessed really. He just loves the brand. It's the one constant thing in his life before and after the war and his ghoulification. He believes that his Nuka-Cola quantum consumption turned him into a ghoul, because it happened very slowly. Unlike most of his fellow ghouls, he couldn't be happier. Nuka-Cola saved his life, prolonged it immensely. He basically worships the stuff as his god. He's a very cheerful guy who loves to throw parties. He spent decades hunting down Nuka-Cola merchandise. The Nuka Girl spacesuit is his most prized possession. When he's not away negotiating new deals with the Baron, he likes lounging on his bed, drinking troubling amount of Nuka-Cola and listening to music. Life is good, and he's been trying to get non-ghouls to turn themselves into ghouls with the power of Nuka-Cola, but so far nobody has agreed. They're lost. Vince can switch from cheerful goofball to deadly serious though in a heartbeat if his job requires it. What most of their clients don't realize is that most of it is for show. Looking strong and scary is usually enough to convince people to pay up. He learned that as a bouncer. Once in a while things can get ugly though, but most of the actual roughing up is done by the Securitrons. It rarely happens though. Brutalized customers are bad for business, and dead customers are very bad for business. So mostly it's empty threats, so no harm done.
A pulled trigger's a happy trigger. Why get caught up in action, you know?
Tony runs the office and coordinates the water deliveries. He used to do pretty much the same thing before the war, managing delivery trucks for Mr. Handy's. Considering the Baron's water business runs on only 6 water trucks, his job is child's play really, and pretty much anyone else could do it. But Vince wasn't going to say no to an easy job. The truck drivers are the ones who have to deal with raider ambushes, which is why every truck is accompanied by Securitrons. Most raider gangs only try once. Over the decades, Vince developed a taste for hunting and taxidermy. When he's not in the office, he's out hunting critters. He keeps a feral ghoul head as a reminder that one day he'll probably turn into one. He made a promise to himself and his co-workers to shoot himself in the head the moment he starts to feel funny. In the meantime, though, he'll continue to rid the world of mutated monsters and distribute clean water to the people of the Commonwealth. Sometimes he'll go out on the balcony to check on raider camps that popped up around the property. Maybe he'll take a few shots at them to scatter them. Sometimes he'll just observe them plotting to take the settlement. Very amusing. If they gather in larger numbers, he sends a couple of Securitrons over. For the most part, though, nobody pays the raiders much attention. The property is well guarded and raids fail before they even reach the fence. Edward is the robot mechanic and comic book nerd you saw running around wearing a replica of the Mechanist armor at the beginning of the video. You'll notice that he's the only one whose kitchen doesn't have a stove, only an electronic. He never cooks. He usually eats with the other workers at the canteen, or basically orders takeout from Earl and eats it at home while reading a comic book. Now that the identity of the Mechanist imposter has been revealed by the sole survivor, Edward has been trying to find the courage to ask her out on a date. They have so much in common. He could help her build an actual benevolent force of robots to patrol the Commonwealth and keep people safe. He visited once and she gave him one of her robo-brain workers as a gift. Edward does not expect a pretty, normal girl to fall in love with a ghoul though, so he's been putting off asking her out. By now he must have read every comic book that has survived in the area. Plus pretty much any novel too about heroes and villains. He's tried convincing Roland to stop writing his boring memoirs and work on a superhero novel instead. But he said, no, go write your own comic book. Edward tried once, but he's no writer and he certainly can't draw, so he's stuck reading his favorite comics. It's not all bad though. Edward gets along well with everyone. They get together to play board games and Dungeons and Dragons. Is this a thing in the Fallout universe at all? I actually don't know. Let's just say it is. Alright, so those are all of the ghouls living at Dark Hollow Pond. Pretty decent regular guys who don't cause trouble. They're grateful, the Baron is happy, everyone is happy. Well, except maybe for some of the customers who struggle to pay those water prices.
Same as always.
Alright, wrapping up this showcase with an aerial view of the settlement. Despite all the drama, I'm very happy with the result. My least lore-friendly build because of the desert overhaul, but still 99% vanilla assets. I hope you enjoyed the tour. this will probably be my last Fallout 4 build for a while. Starfield is on the horizon, and I'm also playing Baldur's Gate 3, like, a lot. It actually took me 2 weeks to make this video. It was difficult tearing myself away from BG3. I plan to finish the game before jumping into Starfield, and I'll also be away on a long hiking trip, so there won't be any Starfield stuff on my channel for a while. I expect gathering enough resources for a base is going to take a long time, and I don't want to cheat on my first playthrough. So, well, no idea when I'll have a nice base to showcase. I don't expect base building in Starfield to surpass Fallout 4 without mods. Maybe I'll forever enjoy Fallout 4 settlement building more, who knows. I still have plenty of ideas. One was a giant metal scorpion raider build on Desperados Overhaul, but seeing the game disintegrate like that, I probably won't attempt it. What I do want to do is a lush overhaul, turning the game into The Last of Us. Makes more sense than the Desert Overhaul too. Sometime next year when I need a break from Starfield. So Starfield will most likely not be the end of Fallout 4 videos on this channel. I'm actually a little worried about Starfield because the base building seems to rely on prefabs, which stifles creativity. Prefabs are super boring in No Man's Sky as well, I almost never use them. We'll have to see. Mods will fix whatever is missing, no doubt. Might be a while though. In any case, I am super excited for Starfield, guys. I haven't been this hyped for a game since Mass Effect 3 in 2012. Long time ago. How excited are you guys? Let me know in the comments. What type of character are you going to play? What aspect of the game are you most excited for? In my case, it's base building of course, but I'm also hyped for shipbuilding and taking my time exploring all those planets. My favorite thing to do in No Man's Sky was scouting pretty locations for new bases, so I'll be doing a lot of this in Starfield as well. Hopefully there's a lot more variety when it comes to the biomes than in No Man's Sky. I hope exploration won't get boring too fast, but I have a good feeling about Starfield. Thanks for sticking with my channel, you guys. See you out there among the stars.